I just had my head so far up my ass where I just didn't want to believe it. What's up, my BBs? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is something that is very personal and has had a big impact on my life. It's been requested a lot for me to talk about this. It has a lot to do with my video on the full explanation on why I stopped smoking. So basically, this is gonna be an explanation / story time of my experience with Cannabinoid Hyperemesis syndrome, or CHS, as I'm gonna be referring to it from now on. So basically, CHS, when you search on Google Cannabinoid Hyperemesis syndrome, or it could be Cannabinoid Hyperemesis syndrome, I've heard it both ways. The thing that comes up is from Cedars-Sinai, and it says, CHS is a condition that leads to repeated and severe bouts of vomiting. It is rare and only occurs in daily long-term users of marijuana. Marijuana has several active substances. These include THC and related chemicals. The rest of what I'm going to be talking about is going to be my experience, plus a couple myths that I'm going to just debunk, which is actually the first thing I'm going to talk about. So, a lot of people have thought that CHS is basically like an OD, an overdose of cannabis, which is absolutely 100% not true. So an overdose, like with other drugs, is when you just take too much at once and you get sick or die, something like that. So with CHS, it's long-term, daily, heavy, prolonged, I'm using a lot of synonyms, use of marijuana. So I smoked a lot every single day. And then I would start getting a little nauseous daily, but I would just think nothing of it, and I would smoke because usually cannabis has antiemetic properties, and a lot of people use it to cure nausea or to aid nausea. So I would smoke more when I was nauseous, thinking it would help my vomiting. But no, I would get progressively worse. And then the first time it ever happened to me, I was at school in San Diego State, and I woke up and just felt really sick. Like, I felt like the worst pain in my life, like worst nausea of my life. And this is gonna get a little, not graphic, but just if you have like a squeamish stomach, I wouldn't watch this part or this entire video, because a lot of this is about being sick. And so then I went to the bathroom and I threw up, and it was just different than anything I'd ever felt before. Like, I had gotten sick, I've had food poisoning, I've had stomach bugs, I've had all that, and it was just different. I don't really know how to explain it, but it was just different. And then after, I sat there and my stomach was like burning, or somewhere in my abdomen was burning. And I am a very extreme person. Some of that is borderline, some of that is just my personality, but I honestly felt like I was going to die. I felt like my body was declining, and like I was just, I don't know how to explain it. So I got back in bed, and I just like was sitting there just like thinking of what I'm going to do. I didn't have a car. I didn't know anyone at that time who had a car. It was like 5 a.m, and I woke up my roommate, and I'm like, I think I need to call 911. Because I really, at that point, some of you might be like, really, that's so dramatic. At that point, I really felt like I was just going down. Something felt really wrong in my body. And so then I called 911, and I had my roommate like talk to the RAs on duty, and got an ambulance, and I felt so sick. And like I was like shaky, I was shivering, like something felt so wrong with me. I keep saying that, but really that's the only way I can describe it. So then I went to the emergency room, and they gave me so at first they offered me Zofran, and that's something that I actually take now, not daily, whenever I need it, but I had read at first, I'm very into medical science and stuff like that, so I read about it, and I heard that it like blocked serotonin, and so I'm like, I need all the serotonin I can get, I don't want Zofran, which I should have taken the Zofran, but whatever. So they gave me something, this is gonna bother me. So instead of Zofran, I had to look that up because it was bothering me that I couldn't think of the name. So they gave me something called Phenergan or promethazine, which I ended up taking later, but I'll get to that. So it's a shot in the butt. So they gave me, and it made me very, I was gonna say nauseous. It made me very sleepy. I ended up falling asleep, and they woke me up so they could do an ultrasound, I believe, of my entire abdomen, and they did blood tests and all that. So the ultrasound came back with nothing, but the blood test, I think I had to do a urine test too, but it was a urine, I don't remember which one it was, that came back saying my lipase was elevated, which meant I had pancreatitis, or at least that's what they said. Pancreatitis, pancreatitis, inflammation of my pancreas. And I was so confused because usually that's from like people who drink a lot of alcohol or have, I think gallstones might be something related to that. But I was really confused, and I was like, I don't know how I got this. And so I watch a lot of like medical shows, House MD, a lot of that. So I always reveal everything to the doctor. And so I was like, yes, I smoke weed. I drink occasionally, but not a lot. And so basically they said that my pancreatitis was caused by smoking weed, which I've told to people, and they've were like, no, but that's what the doctor said. So that was the first time I had ever gotten sick from weed, but I honestly just didn't really believe it, I guess. I thought maybe, all right, it's from probably vaping because that's so highly concentrated, so I'll just smoke flower, but I didn't smoke for a while after that. So the worst part about this for me, so when I'm sick, I'm very dependent on my parents. Like I was 19, and so I'm a big baby, and my parents, usually they would have driven down for something like this to San Diego from Orange County, but they were across the country in Florida visiting my grandparents. So that was my first time doing anything like medical by myself. And so it was scary for me, especially because it wasn't just like a doctor's appointment, it was the emergency room. But it was just extremely scary, and I couldn't smoke after that. And that wasn't like the biggest issue for me. The biggest issue was like, I was in the emergency room for pancreatitis, like what? And so then I stopped smoking, I think for about 20 something days, maybe a month. And the hardest part about that during that time was that I couldn't use it for anxiety. And that was the first time I really noticed that I kind of use it as a crutch for anxiety, which ended up being the way I realized I had a problem. I'm not saying that using it for anxiety means you have a problem with it. Some people, it can be great for anxiety, but the problem with me is that I didn't have any other way to cope with my anxiety. And so I would smoke weed, and if I didn't have weed to smoke, I didn't know how to handle myself, and I would just have panic attacks, and it was awful. But fast forward, I started smoking again about a month later. And so I would ease into it and be like, okay, I'll smoke like once a week. I'll smoke whenever I get anxious, which ended up being a lot. But so I would start off maybe smoking once a week, and then I would just ease into it to the point where I was like, all right, like I smoke once a week, I can probably smoke twice a week. Now I can smoke this now. And it would get to the point where I would start smoking every day again. And then I had a really bad breakup. It wasn't an official breakup, but I ended things with a guy that I really liked. And then I started smoking a lot again. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just in a lot of pain emotionally. I'm just going to smoke until it goes away, and then I'll go back and start easing into things again. That didn't happen. I wasn't able to regulate myself after that. So one day I was home. This was, I think school was over. I had officially transferred schools because I needed to be closer to home because my stomach problems were just so bad. I was just constantly nauseous. So I would wake up. I think I told this story a little bit in one of my other videos. I'm not 100% sure, but it does have a lot to do with this video. I woke up 3 nights in a row with some of the worst headaches I had ever experienced. Like, I had never really had migraines before, but this felt like a migraine. It was so painful. So I would wake up and I would feel, I don't know if it wasn't necessarily nausea. It was like a different feeling, but I still felt like I had to throw up. And so I would go and I would throw up like a couple times during the night sometimes. And it was always like 2 to 5 a.m., 3 nights in a row. After the third night, and like I would get scared to go to sleep because I was like, if this keeps happening in the middle of the night, like I don't want this to happen again. I don't want to go to sleep and have this happen. So after 3 nights, I ended up going to the emergency room in the morning with my mom. They tested for everything. Everything came back negative. And they're basically, that's when I like first started hearing of cannabinoid hyperemesis. And I was just thinking, you know what, like, I don't think that, like, this isn't what happened to me the first time. Like, this is different. I don't, like, I just had my head so far up my ass where I just didn't want to believe it, because I didn't want to have to stop smoking. They sent me home with more nausea medication, and they sent me home with naproxen, which is a headache medication. It's basically like an extreme Advil. I think it's an extreme. And so after, I think I literally counted, it was 46 days, and I started smoking again. Because again, I was like, I can just ease into this. I'll be fine. And so this was, I want to say this was June of last year. So I started smoking again, eased into it, and I was good for a while. Like, first semester at my new school, I did great. Like, I was smoking like once in a while, and I did fine. And I started Blazing Barista that October. And then I started smoking like a little bit more. I remember I made some announcements like why I almost had to quit smoking. And so I thought, I was like, oh, I'm good now. Like, that just happened to me. Like, that's in the past. Like, I can regulate. I'm good. And then second semester at my new school, so I had like a month and a half long winter break. And so I was smoking a decent amount. I'm like, I don't have school. I'll be fine. Like, it's all good. And then again, it just got to the point where I was easing into it, and then I just couldn't regulate. And then it was so now we're getting a little more recent. In March 2019, I had probably still the worst breakup of my life. And this is not me blaming the guy in any way for what happened to me. It's just part of the story. I was heartbroken, and my way of coping was smoking. So I started smoking a lot, like a lot. And then one day I went to class, and I felt really sick before class, and I ran to the bathroom and threw up. So then I came home, and my parents were going out of town. So they went out of town, and I don't know, I was like, this doesn't feel like it did the other time, so I might as well, like, I'll be able to smoke again. And I was so excited. My parents were going out of town. I could like smoke flower in my house. It was great. And so I was still smoking, still feeling a little nauseous, but I kept smoking because. And this was, I said this in my other video, but this was when I realized I had a problem with it, was because I felt nauseous, and I finally started to realize that it was from weed, and I did not want to stop. But that's a whole nother story. That's my full explanation on why I stopped smoking weed. That's a different story. That doesn't really have to do with this. So once my parents came home, I didn't actually throw up this time, but like, except for that first time before I went to class. But it ended up being really bad, just constant nausea, just really bad pain. So I went to urgent care with my mom, and this was the last time that I went to see a doctor about this, or at least urgent care, emergency room type doctor. So I went there and ran all the tests. Nothing came back with any results. And it was because for me, anytime I was in the ER, and they would come back with the results, and they would say they found nothing, my mom would like sigh of relief, and I would start crying. Because yeah, it was great that nothing really bad was wrong with me, but it also meant that they didn't know what was wrong with me. And if it was anxiety or something like that, that's not something that's easily controlled. I want a quick fix. I want to be like, you have this, here's medication to cure it. And so whenever they couldn't find anything, it was like, great, so I have to keep living like this. And it was just an awful feeling. But anyway, so urgent care, they couldn't find anything, and I went back home, stopped smoking. And then I remember there was one last time I smoked, because I knew it would be the last time I was going to smoke, because that was when I was going to start my sobriety. And which is kind of a weird thing to do, like, do it for the last time. It's kind of like those things, I hope this doesn't make anyone mad. It's like when you break up with someone, how you're like, oh, the last time we kissed, I didn't know it would be the last time. So this was kind of me just smoking and enjoying, like, my last time being high. And I remember that so clearly. My dad was, like, sitting there with me. I remember I smoked, like, a bowl and a joint. And that was the last time I smoked. So June 1st, 2018 is my sobriety date. I'm actually about to be 6 months sober, which is just surreal. Like, I feel like I'm going to cry from this, because I've been through such a journey, and I never would have expected me to be able to be happy without smoking because I relied on it so much. This is kind of becoming more of a sobriety video, but I wanted this to be mainly just about cannabinoid hyperemesis and kind of the myths that go along with it and my experience with it and how it affected me, because I hated it. It's one of the worst things ever, and I would always say, like, find what it is about me that makes me not able to smoke weed and change it so I could smoke. But the thing is, without CHS, I don't know if I would have realized I had a problem with weed, because the reason I knew I had a problem was because I kept getting sick and I didn't want to stop, and I felt like I couldn't stop. So that is my experience with CHS. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for supporting me throughout this journey. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys next time.